Graders. So today we're going to focus on 7.6, which is the arts and literature section of your textbook. But before I do that, I actually want to take some time and go over the last couple guided reading forms that you've done. That way you can kind of go back and look at your answers and see how closely they compare to mine. Now, I am giving them a completion grade, which means if you answer my questions completely and turn it in, I'm going to give you either 100% or really close to it, depending on how good of a job you did. You know, if it looks like you did it in 2 minutes because you just wanted to get it done, you're probably not going to get 100%. But if you put in effort, it's an effort grade. Okay, so before we get to 7.6, first thing I'm going to do is go over your 7.4 guided reading form. And with these answers I'm giving you, you can kind of use this when we do your assessment. Okay, because at the end of chapter 7, when we do the assessment, we'll explain more about that. But the answers I'm giving you now will be useful for that. And of course, this video will stay uploaded on Google Classroom for you to come back and look at. Okay, so the first question on 7.4 guided reading form, ask what abolition refers to in the reading. Okay, abolition, the root word is abolish, which means to get rid of. And we're trying to get rid of slavery at this time. Okay, so a lot of people are trying to realize that, or are starting to realize that slavery is wrong, and they're trying to get rid of it. So that's what an abolitionist is. The second question is give 3 examples of famous abolitionists and a brief description of what they did. Okay, so this is really a question that I'm not going to go into super great detail with. It's pretty much to check and see if you did the reading. If you can tell me 3 people who were abolitionists and tell me in a sentence what they did. So, for example, you could say this person wrote books to try and stop slavery to make it seem bad, or this person started a newspaper. You know, those are examples of what you could have for number 2. Okay, for number 3, it says, why did Southerners not want to get rid of slavery, and why did some Northern factory owners not want to get rid of slavery? Well, Southerners obviously did not want to get rid of slavery because it boosted their economy. Okay, Southern farmers were able to use these slaves as free labor on their plantations, which in turn they were able to make more money that way. The reason that Northern factory owners didn't want to get rid of slavery sometimes was because they often relied on products from the South, such as cotton, to make clothes or any of those other products that if slavery were to get banned in the South, those products would become more expensive. So therefore, factory owners in the North might not make as much money either. So therefore, while most people in the North did not like slavery, some Northern factory owners actually did not want to get rid of it for that reason. Okay, what I'm going to move on to next is the 7.5 guided reading form. Okay, the first question says, why did some people feel women deserved more rights during this time period? On the other hand, why did some people not want women to have more rights? Well, obviously people want women to have more rights, or they felt they deserved more rights because they did definitely equal work to men, right? Oftentimes women were taking care of children, running homes. At this time period, women also could have jobs. Okay, so you were potentially making money, you were doing all that important stuff in daily lives, and yet you weren't given the right to vote. You weren't given the right to express your opinion. You weren't given the right to own your own money. Okay, and people felt that because of all the contributions that women did, they deserved more rights. Now, on the other hand, some people did not want women to have more rights because they felt that women were inferior to men in general. Okay, men are the decision makers. Men do this. Men make more money, so therefore they should get more rights. That was the thought process of those people. Not correct, right? Not in today's world, at least. But at that time, a lot of people thought that way. Okay, so that will be your answer for number 1. Number 2, give 3 examples of famous women's rights activists, as well as a brief summary of their efforts. Okay, so again, in this question, you're looking for 3 famous people who fought for women's rights. And then I also want you to tell me in one sentence what they did. You know, so if you go through and Elizabeth Cady Stanton did this, and this person did this, that's a good example. It's pretty much me checking to make sure that you read the material. Number 3, what were 3 major areas that activists were trying to get women more rights in, and what was the most important in your opinion? There's a variety of areas that women were trying to get more rights in, okay? You could have gone with voting. You could have gone with economic, which means making money. You could have gone with the elimination of alcohol. Okay, all of these are areas that women are trying to get more rights in and more push in. Okay, and then what is the most important? That's up to you. Education would be another one that they were trying to get women more rights in. Okay, and that would probably, if I had to pick one that was most important, be mine. But whatever you feel is most important, as long as you can justify it, which means that you have a reason why. You can't just go this because. No, try and come up with a reason why. As long as you can give me a reason why, I'm good with it. Okay, so that's your last two guided reading forums. Compare your answers to the ones I just gave you to kind of make sure you're on the right track. If your answers were like, whoa, that was different, maybe think about going back and changing them. Okay, again, there's a completion grade, so it's already in the grade book, but think about that, okay, because that'll be useful on your assessment for Chapter 7. All right, today we're focusing on 7.6, which is arts and literature. Okay, if you want to follow along with me, page 419. This section focuses on a lot of individual people. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that on your assessment, if I ask you a question about arts and literature, I'm not going to ask you what book Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote. Okay, that would be difficult. Probably too difficult. So what I'm going to ask you, though, or what I might ask you, is what did this person idea, which is this, lead to? Okay, and that's going to be mostly what I focus on today, is how those people's ideas influenced culture. Not so much the one book that they wrote and what was that book about, right? That's really specific, and that sounds more like something you might talk about in an ELA or an art class, depending whether you're talking about a book or music or even a music class or any of that type of stuff, right? But I want to focus on how their ideas kind of change things, okay? So keep that in mind as we're going through this. All right. First thing to realize is it says right away on page 420, a new American art style. Okay, and what we're coming to here is that art has always existed. As long as people have existed, art has existed. Okay, now it might not be the art that you're thinking of, maybe that's hanging in the Louvre or any of that kind of stuff, the Mona Lisa, etc. Okay, but if you consider art anything that is people expressing their feelings or ideas, as long as people have existed, art has existed. Okay, so when it says American style, what it means is that Americans are starting to put their own touch on art. So remember, most of these people that are in America now came from Europe. So most of their feelings and ideas are going to be based on European feelings and ideas. Okay, so what's happening is as they spend more and more time in America, they're starting to develop differences from those people. Okay, they're starting to not think like Europeans so much. Therefore, our art is also starting to change. The first real American art school is the Hudson River School. And in that school, they start to teach more American ideas, whether you're talking about culture or the way paintings are done or etc., putting American touches on it rather than that European style. Okay, the first real common stuff is going to be based on wildlife because that is mostly what the country is made out of. If you get out of New England, okay, that New England coast, not very populated. So therefore, lots and lots of wildlife. And that's what people like John James Audubon and all those other people start to paint. For example, Audubon had that 435 life-size bird prints. Okay, at that time, it was all the birds in America, they thought. Of course, there's more than that now. But at that time, they had thought that. So he went through and painted all 435 types of birds that existed at that time. Okay? So wildlife, very popular at first because, like I said, once you get out of New England, there's not many people. Okay, a new nation find its voice. So we're talking about early literature. Okay, and what literature means is either reading or writing. In this case, writing. New American poetry. People you're going to see names mentioned here: Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, famous poet or famous writer. Okay, he wrote things like Paul Revere's Ride and the Song of Hiawatha, both of which are talking about old events. Okay, events he lived through in the United States. So Paul Revere's Ride is going to be about the Revolutionary War. The Song of Hiawatha is going to be how it idealizes Native American life. So early on in American civilization, people are writing about things that are around them, which only makes sense, right? It's easier to write about things that you've lived through. Okay. As we're moving on, some other famous ones that you witness in this paragraph include Walt Whitman, okay, Emily Dickinson. These are very, very famous writers. And they are in the United States during that early period, and they're starting to write in the American style. Okay, they're breaking away from that European overtone, although it still exists, but they're starting to get more into that American style, making it their own. Okay, Walt Whitman's, or probably his most famous work, is called Leaves of Grass, which is a collection of poems. Emily Dickinson wrote over 1,700 poems in her life. Only 7 of them were published while she was alive. Why might that be? Probably because she's a female during this time period, right? And females were not as respected as they should have been. So, although today Emily Dickinson is recognized as one of the best writers of all time, she was a different person. She didn't leave her house very much. Okay, so therefore she wasn't as widely recognized as some other people. So that might have also contributed to not being as popular. But still, very, very, very gifted writer and considered one of the greats today. Okay. When we say they're beginning to tell American stories, okay, for example, we're talking about Washington Irving, okay, and you've all heard of, you just heard me say his name, you're like, no, I haven't heard of him. Trust me, you have. Okay, Washington Irving wrote what was called the Sketchbook, and in the Sketchbook were small short stories such as Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Okay, and I know you all went, or most of you went to watch that play in 7th grade ELA. Okay, so I know you've read some of his work. So he was a famous writer who wrote that. And when they say they're starting to write the American stories, they're focusing more on ideas of the Americans rather than that European idea. Okay, that's really, and you've heard me say it a lot, but that's that big point I'm trying to get across today. Okay, other famous books from this time include The Deerslayer, The Last of the Mohicans. Okay, and both of those were by Cooper. These people are starting to try and break away from Europe, okay? And actually, Washington Irving was the first American writer to actually get famous in Europe, okay? So the people in Europe are starting to read his work that he created in the United States, and he gets famous overseas. Later writers, so in 1851, Herman Melville published a very famous book, okay, called Moby Dick. And what that book is about is a white whale and a crazed boat captain, okay, and that captain tries to get the whale back for taking his leg at an earlier date. And it's a really good story. It's a big book, okay, it's pretty deep, but maybe if you want now, since you have so much time, or if you do have a lot of time, not all of you do. Okay, and or if you get older, you want to read that book. It's really, really good. Okay, it tells kind of a deeper story than just a man hunting a whale. Okay, but you kind of got to be into that stuff. Other famous writers include Nathaniel Hawthorne. Okay, he writes The Scarlet Letter. I had to read that book in high school, so it's still very, very famous. Okay, Edgar Allan Poe. You've all heard of him before because it was in that play also. Okay, he starts to write horror stories. That's more of an American thing that's starting to become more and more common. Of course, they did write those in Europe too. They just weren't quite as common. William Wells Brown was the first African American to earn his living as a writer, okay? He published a book called Clotel, a novel about slave life, okay? So again, the idea of writing this novel is probably what? Okay, this African American man is writing this novel about slavery for what reason? Probably to try and draw attention to it, right? End slavery. Slavery is bad, which it was, okay, and is. So, finally, we're going to talk about some women writers. All right, many best-selling novels during this period were written by women. Okay, why is that possible? Because women are starting to push for education rights. Okay, they can now read and write really well, or some of them can. Okay, a lot more of them can. So many best-selling books are written by women. Okay, some of these novels told about young women who gained wealth and happiness through honesty and self-sacrifice. Okay, again, American overtones. All right, these women from America believed that if you were honest and you were self-sacrificing, which means gave things up in your own life to help others, good things happen to you. Okay, that's American overtone. Few of these novels are read today, okay, just because they kind of faded out. But at this time, these women writers were actually earning more money than like Herman Melville or Nathaniel Hawthorne, okay, which are still like widely popular books in today's world. So these women are becoming very, very successful in the writing profession. Okay, they're earning their life that way. Finally, we're going to talk about American music. And this is in the same way, is taking that European music that most people had heard when they were younger And now that people have lived in America longer, they've started to have kids here, there's multiple generations, they're going to start adding their own touch to it, okay? The final group of people we're going to talk about is called transcendentalists. That is a huge word. Kind of sounds like somebody you see when your teeth are broken. Okay, but what a transcendentalist means is that they believe that there's more to you than just doing your everyday things. Okay, they believe that humans are capable of reaching this divine state. You're capable of doing great things. Okay, you're capable of doing great things on a great scale. It's more than just your very small everyday life. And this is a style of writers. Okay, the most famous one, which you've probably heard of, is Ralph Waldo Emerson. Okay, and the reason that he's popular is because he obviously did some writing. He also gave speeches and was very good at it. He was able to talk about character and self-reliance and being able to do things on your own, and that you're capable of so much in this big world, okay? You're capable of more than just your little small self, all right? His essays focus a lot on individualism, which means focusing on oneself, which is a huge tone in American culture, right? In American culture, some of us think about the group around us, right? Oh, this group this group this. But your first thought is probably what? Me, right? How's this going to affect me? Okay? And that's a huge American thing. During this time, he focuses on individualism. Okay? Finally, the last person we're going to talk about is Henry David Thoreau and civil disobedience. Okay? Henry David Thoreau, another famous writer, okay, focuses again on individualism. What can you do? You, me, I, that. Individualism, okay? He also focuses on civil disobedience. Let's talk about that. We talked about it in class before. Civil disobedience actually means breaking the law. Okay, so civil disobedience is breaking the law on purpose because you think that law is wrong. So, for example, at this time, a good example is at the earlier time, I mean, an example of civil disobedience would be helping fugitive slaves escape. Okay, that is against the law. But if you believe slavery is wrong, which it is, okay, he encouraged you to do civil disobedience. Break that law, okay? It is wrong. But he also encouraged you to do it non-violently, okay? Which means do not use violence when you're doing your civil disobedience, okay? If you believe the law is wrong, you need to do something to change it. But you also should do that non-violently. He did not preach violence. That is not a good thing to preach in your writing. Okay, so he wanted to express that idea of civil disobedience. That's really what today focused on, okay, is how these people took European ideas from when they moved here and started to put kind of an American twist on it. Okay, now, if you have any questions about what we talked about today, of course, ask me. Okay, I will do my best to help you out. This is the last section in Chapter 7, there will be a guided reading form coming out for it. Do that, and then we're going to start studying for our assessment, okay? As we get through our assessment, I will send out videos explaining to you what to do and all that good stuff. Make sure you're turning in homework, okay? Again, this stuff is mandatory. It's stuff that is graded. It's like normal school, okay? It's not optional stuff. Try and get it in on time if possible. If you need time because something is happening in your life, let's say there's 5 people in your house that need the computer and you just can't find the time one day, let me know, okay? I'm going to be super flexible because I know this is hard, okay? It's hard as a teacher too. So I'm going to be more than flexible with you grade-wise, okay? But you need to talk to me. If you're just not turning stuff in, I'm probably going to call your house looking to see why, okay? So please continue to do the things you're doing. I think we've actually done really well through the first week, okay? If you need anything, please feel free to email me, set up a time to talk, any of that good stuff. I'm here to help you. All right? Have a good day. Stay healthy.